Welcome everybody to Plant Powered. I'm Chef Ryan Jennings and you are watching Eat This TV. There's a lot going on in the world. Everybody's got busy lives. There's all sorts of crazy stuff on TV, on the internet. Sometimes you just need something to comfort you. And that's exactly what we aim to deliver here today. We are going to prepare two of my favorite comfort food recipes right here in real time on Plant Powered. The first dish we're going to prepare is one of my very favorites. It's a vegetable cacciatore with risotto Milanese. So cacciatore is a hunter style, so we're going to be using mushrooms, tomatoes, some olives and capers, and some summer squash to make a nice hearty vegetable ragu. And then risotto Milanese flavored with mushrooms and saffron is going to be a wonderful sort of component to comfort you in that dish. And then second, we'll be preparing something sort of close to our hearts in upstate New York. Buffalo wings are a big deal, and Rochester is very close to that wonderful city and that wonderful football team. Go Bills! And so we'll be preparing our cashew-based cheese sauce with buffalo flavorings, with some pasta, some broccoli, and I don't know if you remember this from being a kid, but if you ever went to your friend's house, or maybe you had it at home, somebody would break out the frozen Stouffer's macaroni and cheese. That was sort of the idea behind this. It was impossibly creamy and somehow delicious, even though you knew it wasn't good for you. But we're going to make a good one for you today here on Plant Powered. But first, we're going to get started with the cacciatore. So the first thing I just want to show you is what we have here. So we made a vegetable stock using all the trimmings that you see us using over the course of the show. And then we put a bunch of wonderful dried mushrooms in there. So we have dried chanterelle mushrooms, dried wood-eared mushrooms, dried shiitake mushrooms. And we put that into it while it was boiling. We turned it off and we covered it, and that's what we have here now. So those dried mushrooms have infused a wonderful flavor into this vegetable stock, and that's what we're going to use to cook our cacciatore, along with tomatoes and some other things, and also what we're going to use to make our risotto Milanese. So that's what we've had that we did a little bit ahead of time here. And now we'll prepare all the vegetables that we need to get the cacciatore going. So I'm just going to grab a bowl here. So first, we're going to cut up some celery just into some nice pieces. This is going to be a slightly longer preparation, 30 minutes or so of cooking time. So we want to cook those into some decent sized pieces so that they don't break down too early. We've got some fennel, and this is a wonderful time to use these fennel tops. We're just going to cut these on a bias. There's no need to peel these at this point since we are going to be simmering them in our ragu. And I think I'll add a little bit of the bulb as well. We'll remove that core. Grab another little bowl here to save for a future vegetable stock. Just cut these into nice batons. Should be very nice there. Then we've also got some nice carrots, which we'll want to peel. And so I love these little Y peelers from Kuhn Rikon. You can buy a pack of them for $3 for like $10, and they do the best job. And you'll see as I'm peeling here, you wouldn't think that there's a whole lot to peeling, but there is a technique behind it. So what you're doing is keeping really your thumb, ring finger, middle finger, and pinky, and using your thumb to rotate it one turn each time, also holding with your pointer finger there. And so we're doing a stroke down, moving our finger once, and then we get a nice peel on the carrot there. And then as you do it more and more often, the quicker it goes, and we just save these peelings nicely for our stock. Actually going to get one more carrot, as these are fairly small. See, this is a nice dish that you can prepare throughout the seasons with seasonal vegetables that are on hand. So the basics here, the fennel, the celery, the carrots, these are available all year round. Obviously the best when you're getting them locally at a farmer's market and the closest to getting them out of the ground as possible, but these are things that are readily available in grocery stores. And so this serves at the base. And then depending on the time of year, you know, in the spring and summertime, I like to make this dish using white wine. But when we get into the fall and winter months, we like to make it using red wine, which adds a different sort of taste and flavor component there to it. And, you know, you change the seasonal vegetables. So we're creating the base here. We're going to finish it with some summer squash because those are starting to pop up now that we've gotten to the summertime here. And then we, you know, as you get into the fall, you can start using cauliflower. Butternut squash goes very well in this. In the springtime, you know, all the great snap peas, asparagus, fava beans, all would go lovely in this dish. So peel our onions, slice these fairly thinly, but not as thin as we could, just because there is going to be a nice cook time on these. And we'll add that in here as well. I've got some toasted and ground fennel seed here that we're going to use to season these as well. You know, this is really the basis for what we're going to make here. I think I've also got, I do, a little bit of leek. So we're going to add that in here as well for another sort of allium component. This leek has already been rinsed. The best way to do that is to split them in half, soak them in water, agitate them real well, and then pull that leek out of there. We've also got some garlic cloves, and for these, I'm really just going to cut them in half and let them cook down. So since this is going to be a long simmered dish, these will break down eventually. Become much more mellow in taste, and you can just eat them as we've prepared them. Good. Okay. So this is all we need to start the cacciatore. I'm just going to set this to the side as we prepare some of our mushrooms for this. So we've got an array of very nice mushrooms here. We have these maitake mushrooms, which are hen of the woods mushrooms, very strong aromatic, real mushroom lovers mushroom. We've got some oyster mushrooms, a lion's mane mushroom, which these things are pretty cool looking. We've got portobellos, king trumpet, and some cremini mushrooms, and we're going to use just a little mix of all of them. Some are going to go into the risotto Milanese, and some are going to go into the cacciatore. And I think the best way to develop flavor in these without using oil and sauteing in a pan would be to roast them in the oven. So what we're going to do is just kind of break these down into fairly large pieces, not too small, just so we can get a nice roast on them. Just taking the stems off of these creminis and cutting those into smaller pieces there. Got a little bit more of the maitake. Very nice. We've got these oyster mushrooms here. These you do want to be a little bit careful with the stems. These can get very tough and chewy down by the end. So we're just going to cut those into a little smaller pieces. And as soon as you start to feel resistance with your knife, even a very sharp one like this, shout out Glestain, that's when those can go into the stock. We've got our lion's mane mushroom here. And then that's good for that one. We've got the king trumpet mushroom, and here we're just gonna again cut it into nice little quartered, and then we'll get a couple more of these cremini mushrooms, and these are all ones that are going to end up in the cacciatore. We're going to treat the other mushrooms for the risotto a little bit differently. So we'll move our stock bucket here and use this to roast our mushrooms. Now, we're going to get a little bit of tamari. Put that on there. And then I've got some white pepper. I really enjoy using white pepper for mushrooms. I think that the earthy quality of the pepper complements the mushrooms very well. And then I'm just going to throw in some whole thyme sprigs. It's just going to be easier to put them in whole now, so when they come out of the oven, we'll just be able to remove the whole sprigs and do it that way. We are also going to add a little bit of Dijon mustard to this before it goes in the oven. But I'll just mix them for now, and these will go in the oven shortly, and then we will add those back into our ragu. The other mushrooms that we're going to need for this would be for the risotto Milanese, so we're going to trim off our tops here, rather the bottoms. And you know, the best way to clean mushrooms is to just use a damp rag to go over the top, which we've done this already. You can also choose to peel the outside like so. It does kind of ruin the color of these cremini mushrooms, but you can just use a little paring knife to peel the outside of them as well. What you don't want to do is submerge these in water, because mushrooms are very porous and will soak up that water, so that when you go to roast or saute them, you're just going to be leaching out water, get rubbery, and not have a nice taste at all. So we're going to cut these into like a 1/4 inch dice. So we put one cut across the middle and then come back through this way. So I'm going to just go through and dice these up. Diced here now. Set these off to the side here. I'm also going to cut up a portobello mushroom. So with these, you actually want to... So we've also got a portobello mushroom here. This, we're actually going to remove the gills on the inside of it. When they are open like this, those can sometimes be bitter. So we'll just scrape those out using the back end of a fork or spoon. And this there's really no use for. We can just take this right to the compost. And for here, we're just going to trim this and then chop these up so it's the same size as our cremini mushrooms. And then cut it this way. And again, about 1/4 inch dice. Okay, let me go with that. Then for our risotto, we will also cut up an onion here. So just peeling the outside, that, saving those for stock. I think a 1/2 onion will be fine for what we are doing. And again, cutting this into about a 1/4 inch dice. Saving the trimmings for the stock, and that can go in here as well. And then we also have a bit of garlic, actually a little more than a bit. We're going to have several cloves here, and we're just going to give this kind of a rough chop, trying to minimize the number of times we run the blade through the garlic cloves, but also get it relatively small so that it mimics the size of the arborio rice that we'll be using to make the risotto. then this, you will just, okay, perfect. All right, so those are really all of the things that we need to do here to start preparing this dish. So we're gonna get ready to go to the stove just after we take a quick break. Hey, welcome back everybody. We're going to start preparing our cacciatore and our risotto Milanese now. So the first thing we do, we got a couple of pans warmed up, and here in this pan where we're going to prepare the risotto, we've got our mushroom mixture along with our onions and garlic. Grab ourselves a wooden spoon, and we're just gonna sweat those vegetables out there. I'm gonna grab salt and both of our peppers here. So we're just gonna add a little bit of sea salt at this point. And then this wonderful vegetable stock that we've infused with all these wonderful dried mushrooms, we have that over here. And then we're gonna start here preparing the cacciatore. So we've got all our aromatic vegetables, the fennel, the onions, the leeks, the carrots, along with celery in here. And we're just gonna start sweating these things down, adding a little bit of salt here, again, because salt draws the moisture out of these vegetables. So there's all this like inherent liquid and taste in them. That salt's gonna help it leach out. And then we're gonna be cooking the vegetables right back in that liquid, and it's gonna provide a wonderful flavor for our dish. So we started the risotto at the same time because cooking risotto is about an 18 to 20 minute process from start to end once you've added the rice. The idea being that we add this wonderful arborio rice that we have here, which has a very nice high starch content. And as we cook it, it's releasing that starch into our risotto, getting to that creamy place without having to add any sort of cream or butter or anything like that. It's just the starch from the rice. So it has a pure, clean taste, and something that we're, I think, really going to enjoy when we get there. And so we're just looking for these, we've got the onions, garlic, and mushrooms in here. They've all kind of released their liquid and they're starting to cook down again. Again, we're cooking our cacciatore here, and those are all sweating down as well. I'm actually going to add just a little bit of water to this one just to get things moving a little more quickly. All right, so now that we have gotten the vegetables mostly softened here, we're gonna add our arborio rice. So the basic ratio when making risotto is about 1 part rice to 4 parts stock or liquid. So we should have plenty of our stock back here. And as soon as we start to see the outside of the granules of rice become translucent, then it's time to start adding some liquid. I'm also going to add a little bit of tomato paste to this for a little extra umami. Not a whole lot on this one because we're also going to add some of those famous Jersey fresh crushed tomatoes here in just a little bit. Okay. And then we've also got a few dried herbs here. I like to use some dried herbs in this because it's very traditional, and I also have a dear friend whose grandma made risotto Milanese all the time, and she always incorporated dried herbs into her recipe, and this is a little bit of an ode to her. We're also going to put some of that in with our cacciatore as well. And so I just added a little bit of dried rosemary and a little bit of dried thyme. All right, now, so the starch has started coming out of our rice. It is starting to coat the bottom of the pan. I can start to see a little glaze forming. So now it's time to start introducing liquid. And the first we are going to introduce is white wine. So this will deglaze the pan nicely, stop the rice and vegetables from sticking. And you can see almost immediately when we start stirring this, the starch is coming out of the rice and creating a nice sort of creamy consistency. Meanwhile, our vegetables for the cacciatore are slowly sweating down here. Also very good. And here we are. So at this point, I'm going to start ladling in our mushroom stock that we've the vegetable stock that we've infused with dried mushrooms. It's okay if we get a few little pieces of the dried mushrooms in here. They have been fully rehydrated at this point, and they'll actually be very nice with this dish, as long as the pieces aren't too big. Got some of the chanterelles especially are very nice, and we'll continue to rehydrate as we cook this risotto in its broth. And at this point, there's not a whole lot more to show you. I'm going to stand over this, swirling it around, adding stock slowly until we have a delicious creamy risotto, which will be in about 15 minutes. And our cacciatore, all that's left to do at this point is add a little bit of wine, some tomato paste, and some of our crushed tomatoes. We'll do that, let it all cook, and when we get back, you'll see how we finish all these dishes together. All right, welcome back, folks. While our risotto is finished simmering and our cacciatore is getting there, I'm going to start our next dish, which is the buffalo broccoli mac and cheese. You know, I don't think there are any more comforting things in the world than mac and cheese, and our plant-based version of it is no exception. So what we're going to start to do is just build our sauce. First thing we're going to do is just slice up an onion. Everything here just needs to be cut about the same size so it cooks at the same rate. We're just looking at cooking time here. So we're just slicing our onions and garlic nice and thin to get started here. Then we've also got a russet potato. You could use a sweet potato if you have it. That'd be fine too. But we're adding this for the starch that's in the potato and to help give it that sort of cheesy viscosity that you will see in mac and cheese. I will just grab our pot here, sauce that we're going to be preparing it in, because everything can just kind of go in here right now to start, and then we will take it to the stove. All right. So what I've got here is some peppers that we've roasted ahead of time. So all I did was give them a quick rinse and then put them onto the stove, open burner, and just really torch the outside of these things. And what that does is create nice tender flesh on the inside. So I can't recommend enough having a box of disposable gloves at home. It really makes any sort of preparation that's a little bit dirty much cleaner, and it also just helps quite a bit with cleanup. And you know, if you are cooking with raw meat and things at home, it does help, you know, keep your hands clean, keep your surfaces clean, so you don't get to worry about cross-contamination. That's not something that we have to worry about at Sweet Pea, but you know, we don't preach. We like to cook with plants and realize that there are plenty of other delicious things in the world, and if that's what folks would like to eat, we think that's great too. So we're just going to peel this pepper and kind of pull it away and try to be gentle so that we don't disturb the seeds there, because we'd like to get rid of those. And then we're just going to kind of just tear these into rough pieces. Doesn't make much of a difference because it's all just going to go into our Vitamix blender here in a little bit. These other peppers I am going to add into our cacciatore. So they didn't need to be in there initially because everything else that needs to cook is cooking. These were cooked over the stove. So all we need to do is add them in at some point here once we are ready to add our zucchini as well. So take off our gloves and dispose of them, and then roll this right up. Parchment paper is compostable, and actually paper and brown paper are a critical part of making usable compost, so you're actually doing the composting service a favor. Yeah, so we are just going to take these peppers and cut them into, you know, decent sized pieces that mimic the size of the other items that we have in our cacciatore. About 1/2 inch. Just put these back on our plate here, clean up, and then we'll prepare our summer squash that we're going to add near the end of the cooking, because as we know, that is a fairly tender vegetable. It doesn't require a whole lot, and it's quite honestly tender enough to just eat raw, but we will cook it just a little bit here. Okay. All right, so we've got a yellow squash and a zucchini here. We are just going to trim off the root end and the stem end. And then we will cut those in half, and we're just going to remove this middle part here. This is good for soup, but it is a little bit mealy because of the seeds in there. And we will just remove that here as well. And here, I'm just gonna take a quick second to give everything a stir behind us. Everything's looking wonderful. One thing I did not mention before that went into the risotto that's really crucial for the taste is the saffron. Saffron is one of the most expensive ingredients in the world. Fun fact that the most of it goes into the Italian aperitivo Campari. So thanks, Campari, for making saffron even more expensive for the rest of us. But a little bit goes a long way, and if you're lucky enough to have some, I would add it. It's not, if you don't have any or don't want to pony up the large sum for it, it's not the end of the world. But if you do have some saffron, I highly recommend it. And so then we're just going to cut these squash here into a little diamond shape just for some fun. So we're just cutting these kind of on a bias into nice diamonds. Yeah, just larger pieces like that work well through this. These ones here are a little bigger, so we'll cut those down that way. And then we'll just put these on our plate with our roasted peppers that we will then add to our cacciatore in a minute. Okay, so for back to our mac and cheese sauce. We have here in our pot russet potatoes, a little bit of water to start the cooking process, onions and garlic. We're also going to add some cashews. This is going to help create a creamy texture in the sauce. We're also going to add some chipotle, just some of the adobo sauce here. It's going to add a little heat to this, and that's a critical part of buffalo. And then hot sauce. Whole bunch of hot sauce. Buffalo sauce usually is just hot sauce and butter. We're not going to use any butter, but we'll get the creaminess from the cashews. And then we're just gonna add some smoked paprika and a healthy amount of that. We're gonna take this to the stove. There's a few other components that'll go in before we puree it, but we're just gonna let this simmer and let those finish up. I'm gonna go grab our mushrooms out of the onion to add into the cacciatore, and when we come back, we'll start finishing up these dishes. So we'll see you in just a minute. Hey, welcome back everybody. Our cacciatore and risotto Milanese is just about ready, so we're almost ready to go to the plate. I'm just gonna chop up a few fresh herbs here. Got a little bit of basil. We've got a little bit of parsley. Dill is not gonna go well in this dish, so we will not be including it. So we're just gonna take our nice sharp knife here and glide through these herbs. Perfect. And now you'll see we've got our risotto here. This has been cooking for about 18 minutes in total. It's got this beautiful yellow color from the saffron. We've got our mushrooms in here, tomatoes, all of these things. We're going to give it a little taste for seasoning here. Perfect, delicious. Very, very good. Okay, so we'll just set this to the side here. And then the pièce de résistance, our cacciatore. So we added in our zucchini, our roasted mushrooms, which had a nice caramelization from the onion, from the oven. I mean, we could just serve it right like this, family style in this large cocotte, but we will have to plate a little bit here. So we will add our herbs into our risotto. Just stir that in. Risotto should have a nice sort of toothsome bite to it, but be nice and creamy. This has actually gotten just a tad bit too thick, so we are going to add just a little splash of almond milk to it. Risotto should spread on the plate. It shouldn't sit up straight. So good. Okay, so we'll take our nice bowl here, fun with the tomatoes and such. I also started cooking our pasta for the mac and cheese back there. That rice pasta takes a little bit longer than whole wheat pasta, so we just wanted to get that going in the interest of time here. You see as our risotto just sort of falls onto the plate, it's a perfect consistency and what we've been working for here. It's just a very sort of large portion here. And then we have our cacciatore. I'm actually just going to add a touch of this paste here. So this is marmite or Vegemite, which is auto-leesed yeast extract. And what that's going to do for us here is just add a little extra layer of umami. It's perfectly fine. We could have added this earlier, but I think it's perfectly fine to add it now. And just stir that in there. Okay, risotto. This I think would also do well with some fresh herbs. And I'm going to add a couple of leaves of sage in here as well. It's that nice sort of woodsy taste I think will suit this dish, sort of, especially since it's in the style of the Huntsman. So we can just be kind of rustic about this. This is a fairly rustic dish. And then the last two things we're going to add, and you want to do this near the end, you don't want this to really be simmered too long, is to add some capers. And I'm also going to add a few of these Castelvetrano olives, and we will just half these quickly and add them in there. And then the residual heat from the stew will take care of heating these last few components through. Perfect. So we'll just finish stirring these in. This absolutely smells incredible. It would certainly draw in some animals for the hunter to go after, or be a very welcome dinner after being out in the forest all day. There we are. We can just add a few leaves of parsley around as well. Chefs are kind of mixed on adding these sorts of things at the end. I do like to get a nice bite of fresh parsley or something in the end there, especially with something that's nice and rich like this dish. So here is our vegetable cacciatore with risotto Milanese here on Plant Powered. Our pasta is almost ready. I'm gonna go strain that off and get our sauce, and then we'll be able to plate our buffalo broccoli mac and cheese. Stick with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. We are going to puree up our sauce for our buffalo broccoli mac and cheese. Our pasta will be ready in just a moment. So here we've got the cashews, onions, potatoes. We want this to just be slightly softened. Those potatoes, it's okay if they're just a little bit hard, because as we puree them into the sauce, they'll break down, but it's also going to give us the right consistency that's going to mimic a cheese sauce. So just a couple other things to add here. This is our magic ingredient today, a little bit of pickle brine. And then we are just going to add enough almond milk just to cover this so it purees smoothly on its own. And I am going to get our pasta while this purees. It should just take a few moments, so cover your ears, folks. Really important when using a blender, high-powered blender like this, make sure you're starting on 0 and ramp it up. Ramp it down and then turn it off so that next time you don't get a little surprise. So what we're going to do here, as far as the broccoli is concerned, you could have done like florets of this that you blanched and threw in there. I'm just going to use the tops here and just kind of cut those off. We can save the rest for something else. And using that with the residual heat from the sauce, we'll add just a nice sort of textural component to this, and I really enjoy serving broccoli this way as long as you can use this. Like this part is great shredded in a salad or as a slaw, also wonderful, but maybe we'll save that one for another show. So we'll add our broccoli in here. Perfect. Clean this up here, neat and tidy. We've got our sauce. You know, this Vitamix blender has really been critical to us being able to remove things like cream and butter from our cooking. Let's see, it's got a beautiful color, looks just like buffalo sauce. And we're gonna add enough here to coat that pasta. Also makes a great, you know, you can transfer this right to the fridge with the remaining things. And then I'm just gonna throw this back on the stove for 2 seconds here, just to let it really coat the sauce nicely. And as we do that, we will just finish up. You know, chives or scallions would be great with this. Today we've got some parsley, which will do just as well. I'm gonna remove most of the stems for this and just give this a nice chop. Having fresh herbs around is really just such a delight. They add such a fresh component to almost every dish. I like using different types of herbs and mixes of them when possible, and especially in the summer months when you can just have little pots out in your backyard or on your fire escape or wherever you have a little outdoor space. If you don't, just get them at the supermarket. There's tons of them out there. And oh, perfect. So our sauce has nicely coated our pasta here, that gorgeous brown rice pasta that we got from Tinkyata. Great. All right, now we've got our bowl here. Take a nice big spoon and ladle in here. If you wanted to take this a step further, you could absolutely put this into a gratin dish with some breadcrumbs on top and throw it underneath the broiler for a few minutes to get a nice crust on it. We're gonna skip that today and just sprinkle a little bit of extra smoked paprika on top for a little bit of extra color. And I'm also just going to dot it a little bit with the hot sauce here and there, just like any other sort of buffalo inspired dish. Clean up our plate, and we have done it. There is our buffalo broccoli mac and cheese. We'll bring back our old friend vegetable cacciatore with risotto Milanese. That makes me feel better just looking at it. I think I'll feel even better once we've had a bite to eat here. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Plant Powered. I'm Chef Ryan Jennings, and you've been watching Eat This TV. See you next time.